In this final video, I'd like to talk a little bit about turning your designer's eyes off and on. And also, I'm going to cover tips for substantive participation and critiquing of design work. So, several years ago, I was teaching a typography course on ground, and we were going over logos, and I pointed out the wonderful FedEx logo to my students, and several of them hadn't noticed this white arrow in between the E and the X, which of course is symbolic of the delivery service, and it makes for just a simple yet really elegant and powerful logo. And so everybody got a real kick out of that, as did I, of course. I love the logo. I remember, however, one student was saying, "Oh, I wish you hadn't shown me that, Bryson. You know, I can't look at this logo the same way now. It's really distracting. I wish you hadn't pointed that out." And we all got a big laugh out of it, of course. But she did have a point in that when you're starting out in typography and in graphic design and you develop your eye and you learn to notice things like kerning and colors and placements and alignments, certainly graphic design techniques can serve to be a little distracting sometimes and gets in the way of daily life, it would seem sometimes. But I want to reassure you that you can in time, and you will learn to turn your designer's eyes off and on. If you had to go to the emergency room in the hospital, and you saw this sign here, you probably aren't thinking about or caring that the T is the wrong color, or if the kerning of the words are below are not good. You just want to see where the emergency room is and to get there, right? So it doesn't matter. Yes, there is less than stellar graphic design out there, but it doesn't have to be distracting. It doesn't have to really bother you, unless, of course, you choose to turn your critical eye on. Okay, and so as designers, you will find times when you need to turn that eye on and look at things the way they need to be looked at, or you can turn it off and just go to the grocery store and do your shopping and not be distracted by everything. So I hope that's reassuring for you, so that you don't feel like by learning all these things you're never going to be able to live a normal life without being distracted. So rest assured that it does not have to be that way. Okay, now I have a very text-heavy page here for you. I'm not going to read through this, of course, but this is information you may want to take screenshots of and study what we call substantive or substantial participation, both in discussion questions, but also later on when you start doing critiques of one another's design work. Okay? It's not enough to just say, "That's really good," or "I like it." And we can't just submit that. It's not enough. We can certainly start out that way, but it's really important to provide more detail in both discussion questions and in critiques. So, in a discussion question, which you certainly do every week in your courses here, is you think about the course content. What can you say about the question and the reading that you may have done in the course that relates to the question? Anything that you might have seen or learned outside of class that relates to the question, or even a personal experience or an anecdote that is relevant to the topic. This is a really good tip for substantive participation. If you have a story to tell, or if you have an anecdote or tips that you've garnered from outside sources, that's really wonderful for taking part in an online or even an on-ground conversation. So these are good discussion tips, not just for school, but for basic conversational techniques. Now here's a really good technique for furthering a conversation and developing it, and that is to ask a question. And not a yes or no question either. It should be a question that makes people think and makes them come up with a response. It's a great way to continue a conversation with someone that you enjoy talking with. Okay, it's also certainly okay and good to challenge someone's point of view or point that they make in a discussion, as long, of course, as it's done politely and in a positive way. But this can be a really great way to spark a debate and to further a conversation. Also making relationships between different points that people have said, bringing in correlations and drawing things together can be really helpful. Of course, you want to use the right vocabulary. In your design classes, you're learning a lot of new terms and techniques and terminology. Important to bring those in as they relate to the topic matter. Okay. Also, appropriate citation. If you quote somebody in a discussion post or in any writing or use, you really want to give credit where it is due. Okay. So here's an example of substantive participation in an online class. This was the discussion question: how can we establish a sense of community? And each of these students, there's 4 different ones in the different colors, and you can see that there is some really good writing here and good thoughts, and that student B is responding to student A, student D responds to student C. This is really what we want in the discussion boards, really thinking about what is being said and responding to one another. So you can use these paragraphs here as a kind of a benchmark for yourself. Now the next section here is providing critiques. We're not doing that in this typography course, but in subsequent courses you may find yourself providing feedback to someone else, and it's really important to provide both positive and constructive feedback. So one technique that we teachers use, and I'm going to share this with you, is called the sandwich technique or the sandwich approach. And you may have heard of it. Basically, it's starting and ending your feedback with something positive and encouraging. Okay? You can always find something positive to say. But you start that way to build trust and to get people feeling good about themselves and the work. And then in the middle, you bring in the constructive, supportive comments. Of course, the wording and the tone of voice, if you're speaking to them, is really important. You want it to be upbeat and respectful. And a good tip is to think about the choice of wording. What I like to use is the phrase, "Have you considered?" This is a beautiful layout, Steve, but have you considered using red a little more prominently? Or have you considered, or did you think about trying a different typeface here, etc., etc.? So then, you make your comments, and then at the end you say, well, I just want to say you've got some really strong imagery here, your layout is strong, you've got great alignments, just consider the other topics. Okay, they won't feel attacked by your constructive comments. They will feel instead good about it and maybe more eager to try the different things you've suggested. So lastly, if someone asks you a specific question, either in a critique or a discussion thread, please definitely get back to them. And I like to get back within a day or two. It is just common courtesy as well as good business, collegial, and professional practice. It lets people know that you're listening to them, that you've heard what they've said, and that you respect their opinions and that you answer them. And if you are asked by someone to review their work, please do so if at all possible. Again, that shows respect and good common courtesy. And if you ask someone for feedback on your work, you may want to offer a feedback for them as well, just to do a trade-off. I have found in my 15 years of teaching that students learn as much from one another as they do from me and from the course. And sorry about that. And peer feedback is definitely one of the best ways to learn, especially online when you can't see the person that you're talking to. So definitely take advantage of the opportunities to give and receive good feedback. If you want to study more about this topic, the aiga.org website, How to Survive a Critique, is an interesting page that talks about basically an on-ground class critique, but the concepts are there and they're really helpful to read through if you're interested. Thank you so much for watching these videos. I've enjoyed making them, and I have high hopes for all of you as you continue in your design studies. I'd like to leave with a beautifully rendered typographic quote that I found online. I don't know who wrote this, but it's a wonderful phrase that I think embodies what we can think about in not only our studies but our lives, and that is, give what you got to get what you want. And it's true. If you want something, you can have it, but you really do need to give it your all and give what you got. So I'm hopeful hopeful that the information in these videos and in the course will give you some of that as you proceed in your typographic knowledge, but also in your graphic design skills. Best of luck to all of you. Thank you.